Hi, I'm Taylor Thompson, and I want to welcome you to the SheNetwork. And what we're going to talk about today is really the essence of what storytelling is. And honestly, I think this is pretty much a lost, dying art. Storytelling is in everyday life. Everything that we do, from the time that we grew up, from the time that till the time that we die, we live and breathe and talk about stories all throughout our life. But what I want to do is share with you today is why storytelling is so essential whenever you're building and growing a business. And so a lot of times people think of stories and they think it's a list of facts or bullet points or features. And so I'm just going to give you a little brief outline of what storytelling is not. Okay. So if you talk about storytelling is not a bunch of features of your product or bullet points about your product. It's not all the facts that we go down the list of ingredients. A lot of times people talk about the ingredients of their products or ingredients of their compensation plan, and that's not what storytelling is. A lot of times people think about storytelling as before and after pictures, maybe some results in just a before and after picture. A lot of times people share a lot of, especially in the network marketing space, they talk about a lot of industry jargon or promises that, are not necessarily part of the story. So let's talk about what storytelling is. And storytelling is really about you. It's about who you are. It's about your character. There's emotions that are tied to that. There is a cast of characters, and whether that's you and the people that are involved with you. And so I want to give you a real basic outline of what that looks like. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. And then I'm going to go through and break it down for you of what that actually is. So for me, whenever I started in this industry, I say industry, there's some people say industry, some people say profession. I started, 25 plus years ago, long time ago. And I was just a mom. I had my background. I had education. I had a college degree. And for me, what happened is that I was brand new mom. And for me, everything changed. From that moment that I looked in that little baby's eyes, and I could not bear the thought of somebody else raising that baby. So I was looking for an opportunity. I was looking for a way to have mom care versus daycare. And I tried so many things out there. At the time, whenever they were, answering ads in a newspaper from, stay at home, stuff envelopes, make beaded jewelry. I went through so many crazy things. Now, I don't think that they actually have ads in the newspaper like that anymore. You may see those those kind of things on Facebook ads or Instagram concepts. But what happened for me was I tried a lot of different things to no avail. And I got introduced to an incredible opportunity. And so I was introduced to this company, and they were talking about selling these products. And, I, like everyone else, I wasn't interested. I wasn't interested in selling anything. But what happened for me was life-changing whenever they told me this story. And they told me this story about this little couple. I lived in West Texas at the time, and they were living in this really small town outside of where I lived, in a town of about 15,000 people. And at that time, they were making $10,000 a month. Now, you have to understand, all I cared about was making an extra $800. For me, that was like me working full time and paying for daycare. And so whenever they shared this story with me, I never believed in a million years. I never heard like me, a stay-at-home mom, could make $10,000 a month. But what I did hear in that story was that if a little couple, not very far from where I lived, in a little bitty town, could be making $10,000 a month. I thought, wow, surely this desperate mom who wanted mom care versus daycare could make an extra 800. And that's what happened for me. I got started, and my very first month, I tripled my goal of $800. And that's what really started my career. And I never looked back. And, I started taking my story to the marketplace of what happened with me and the products. And that was a really life-changing moment. And so that's like my story in a very clear, concise way, kind of, I'll call packaged up. But what I want to talk about is breaking that story down and how it relates to you and how it relates to you in your business and what you're doing. And a lot of times whenever I refer back to what the story is not, so many times people start telling the features, they start telling ingredients of products, they start telling things that most people don't necessarily relate to. So what I want to do is I want to talk about the things that people identify with, because I was always taught that, facts tell, but stories sell. And stories, we relate to it completely different because there becomes an emotional attachment to the person you're speaking with. But also, if you think about whenever I was sharing my story with you and what happened with me, is that I related to the person that was telling it was the concept of, wow, if that can happen for them, maybe it can happen for me as well. And so whenever we're sharing our stories, sometimes people, they don't realize that when they're telling it for the benefit of the person that's hearing it, for the person that's on the other side of the story. And so you want to create a story that creates relatable, identifying markers. And what I mean by that is that you want to paint a picture. And I'm going to give you this outline. So whenever you're painting a picture of what does that look like? What was your life like before you were introduced to your product or service or the opportunity that you were looking for? How were you introduced? And what happened to you as a result of that? Now, lots of times people come into this space and, maybe they were consumers of a product or service, and then they went on to become into the opportunity. But then there's a lot of times that people come into an opportunity because they were looking for the opportunity. So I'm going to take it from two different perspectives. So you're painting a picture for the person that you're speaking to. And whenever you're telling your story, you want to create an identifiable way that they can relate to you, that they can connect with you, that they would be able to say, wow, if that can happen for them, maybe, just maybe that can happen for me too. And so whether you're talking about consuming a product and a result, or using a service and the result, or starting an opportunity and the result, you want the person that you're speaking to be able to relate to it in a way that makes them feel like maybe that can happen for me too. So I'm going to give you an example. So whenever we start, we're saying we want to always identify with them and tell them our name, right? And then identify maybe where you're from. That's another identifiable way to relate to people. But the key thing for me is always talking about background. Now, for me, for 25 plus years now, I've always related to my audience as I'm just a mom. I'm just a stay-at-home mom. Because, wow, how many moms are out there, right? I don't talk about any of my successes. I don't talk about, all the big money. I go always back to the place that they can identify with me in the space of, all I cared about was an extra $800. How many moms out there would want mom care versus daycare? How many women out there would love to make an extra $500 to $1,000 a month in that range? If I talked about all the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've made, millions of dollars that I've made over the years, nobody would relate to that. I want to bring it back down to a space that they can say, wow, if she can do it, maybe I can do it. So we want to talk about what our background is. Now, my business partner and also husband, Larry Thompson, whenever we speak together, we always talk about me being the stay-at-home mom and him being a long-haired hippie construction worker. And after 51 years of him being in this space, and all the accolades that go with him and his name, he never talks about those things. He always talks about just being a construction worker because so many people can identify with that. So whenever you're telling your story and you can relate to somebody in the background of where you came from, maybe you're a teacher, maybe you're a waitress, maybe you're a construction worker, maybe you're a truck driver, whatever that background is that allows for other people to identify with you, who you are. Now, they may not remember your name, but I guarantee you, if you share your background, they'll always say, I don't remember their name, but gosh, they were a real estate agent from California, right? So the other thing that I want to do in creating this identifiable path is that I want to create a way that now that I've introduced myself to you and you know my story, I want you to be able to take my story and say, my friend Taylor, she's just a stay-at-home mom and all she was doing was looking for a way to make an extra $800 and she did that her very first month. It's so powerful. So you don't even have to remember my name, but I'm like, you could just talk about she's a stay-at-home mom and she was just wanting to make an extra $800. You could talk about that alone and I'm your friend and take that story to the marketplace. So let's back up now. So we're talking about your name, where you're from, what your background is. And you're wanting to paint a picture of what your life was like before. Whenever I shared that I was looking for a way to make, I wanted mom care versus daycare. I talked about all the different things that I tried in order to be able to make money from home, right? So that was my pain point. Now, if we were talking about a product, you could talk about, so for instance, if you were taking a consumable product, maybe it was some sort of nutritional product, you could talk about, I tried so many different things to lose weight. I was exercising all the time and I was cutting back and and nothing ever worked for me. I could not get the weight off. Maybe you were taking a product and you had maybe some sort of health challenge. Talk about paint the picture of what your struggles were before you were introduced to a product or an opportunity. You want to paint this picture of what it looked like before. So then we go into the transitional space. The transitional space is, how are you introduced to this product? How are you introduced to this opportunity? Mine was, I answered an ad in the newspaper. They told me a story about this little couple, right? How are you introduced? Was it a friend? Was it a neighbor? Did you get a sample of the product and you tried the product? Maybe you were a consumer of the product or you loved the service, and what happened for you and your family? You were totally skeptical and didn't want to have anything to do with it, but once you tried it, or once you went to maybe you went to a meeting, maybe you were on a webinar, maybe a Zoom call. What was it? What was that pinnacle? What was that pivotal moment for you that opened your eyes to the possibilities of exactly what I said? Wow, if that can happen for them, maybe it can happen for me. What was that thing? And everybody's different because it creates another identifiable marker that allows somebody to say, that's a great way for me to share my product. That's a great way for me to share my opportunity or my service. And so it's an identifiable marker. So we're painting a picture of what it was like before, how we were introduced. Now we're going to talk about the after portion. So there's 3 segments. So there's a beginning, there's a middle, now there's an end. So what does the end look like? So what happened for me is I got started. What happened? So you always have the first, I always try to talk about, paint the best picture in the best possible way. And so maybe your best story was your first week that you were in business. Maybe it was last month. And I try not to date the time frame, because if you notice that, I did tell how long ago I started in this business, but if I was sharing that with a new person, I wouldn't date myself. I would just talk about where I started looking for an extra $800 and how I tried a lot of different opportunities and nothing ever worked. And what happened for me my very first month. Now, I could tell that story and you wouldn't know if that happened to me last month or 26 years ago. So we don't want to date ourselves. We want to talk about, okay, so my very first week, it was so exciting because, I got started and I lost 5 pounds in my first week. In my very first month, I dropped 20 pounds and I went from a size 14 to a size 8, right? So you wouldn't know that that was my product story and what happened to me 26 years ago. You may have thought that just happened to me last month if I was telling a product story. So, and how it relates to someone else. So I got started on the product, and for me, I couldn't believe how much appetite control I had. I couldn't believe how much energy I had. My very first week, I lost 5 pounds. I couldn't believe it. My very first month, I dropped 20 pounds and went from a size 14 to a size 8. And the best part is I was able to get off my allergy medication. Okay. So what did I do in there? I painted a lot of different things, and I'm telling a lot of different bullet points of what happened to me as a result on the product, which is great. So now if I tied into my income and what happened with the opportunity, and the best part for me is that I was able to get 10 new customers my very first month. I started building my team, and what happened for me, I not only met my goal, but I tripled my goal my very first month. Now I'm giving you concepts to go on so you can think about how you would build your story, how you would talk about the best parts and not get caught up in the details. I will tell you, if you think about a lot of times the way you hear people's story, they talk about so many details that you get lost in the minutia of, was it a Wednesday or a Thursday? I don't remember if she told me it was if I took the products twice a day or 3 times a day. I'm giving you examples of how people get lost in details. So I want you to really write this down, and I want you to take this to heart. If it's not necessary to say, it's necessary not to say. Because we want to remember the reason that we're telling a story is we're telling a story for the person's benefit that's hearing it. And whether that's a one-on-one, whether that's on a Zoom call or a conference call, maybe it's in a meeting room of 1,000 people. We want the person hearing the story to be able to relate to us, to be able to understand what our pain point and how desperate we were, how we were introduced and what happened. How did we come about the opportunity? How did we come about, starting the product? What happened with us? Did it happen the first week? Did it happen the first day? Maybe it didn't happen for the first 3 months. It doesn't matter, because there's people that are hearing your story that you want to relate to, that they can say, wow, if that can happen for them, maybe it can happen for me. But let's talk about how to incorporate your story in everything that you do. If you're building with how you're building your business and how you are relating to people, that can mean you should be incorporating stories with every aspect of your business. Not just trying to get somebody to start your product or service, or not just trying to get somebody enrolled into your opportunity, but you use stories to relate to them from every aspect of what you're doing. if I'm going to, whenever I'm involved with people, I always want to get to know them. I want to know why they're here. How did they come about that? What was their background? How did they get started? And what's going on with them now? Because I know this. If I have a story in my toolbox, if I'm talking to a brand new person tomorrow and they're telling me their pain points, and maybe it's a construction worker. I don't know anything about being a construction worker. I have no clue. I'm just a mom. But what if I was able to tell them Larry's story as the long-haired hippie construction worker? Maybe it was something that they could relate to and identify with. What if I'm talking to a teacher who just desperately wants to, she just needs a way to make an extra $500. She loves her job as a teacher, but she's looking for an opportunity to make $500. What if I have a story in my toolbox of my next door neighbor who's a teacher who just got started, who her very first month made $400? What if I was able to share that story out of my toolbox with the brand new person that I'm talking to? How powerful would that be? Let's talk about whenever how you use stories and incorporate, and you're trying to get someone started in your opportunity. And maybe they don't have the money to get started. What if you were able to tell your friend Joe, you just got started, and he did not have any money, and he sold some furniture in his house just to get the money in order to get started, and what happened with him in his very first 60 days. Whenever you are relating to someone and they're telling you the reason why they can't get started, maybe they're telling you a reason why they can't come to the meeting. They're telling you the things of what their pain points are. And you could use a story that you have in your toolbox that can relate to where they are in that moment, that encourages them, that empowers them, that makes them feel like, wow, if that can happen for Joe, if he can sell a few items and get his money back and be on his way to making an extra $500 to $1,000 a month, how powerful it is to the person that you're speaking with. So in storytelling, it's a way for you to identify with the person you're speaking with. It's a way for you to pave the way to open their mind to the possibilities of what could happen for them. It's a way for you to relate to them and make them feel good about you, make them feel good about it, whatever the conversation is. It meaning maybe your product, it meaning maybe your service, it meaning maybe your opportunity, it meaning maybe coming to a meeting, it may be getting started, it may be whatever that looks like, and make them feel good about themselves. If you can accomplish those three things whenever you're talking and telling a story, make them feel good about you, make them feel good about it, and make them feel good about them, then what you've done is you've definitely created a long life relationship. You've created an open mind to the possibilities of what can happen for them and how it can impact them and their family for future. And so I really hope you were able to get some incredible notes and some ideas of what storytelling is and how you can incorporate that and how you can become better at relating to people and sharing your story and having an understanding it's not about you. It's about the person you're talking to. It's about the person that you're trying to change their life. It's about the person you're trying to impact. So I hope you got some value out of today. I hope you got some value about storytelling and the impact that you can bring and how you can maybe tweak a few things that you've been maybe not doing right and maybe can incorporate some things that I suggested. So anyway, that's it for me today. And my name is Taylor Thompson, and I want to welcome you to the SheNetwork.